Good morning, peeps. It's your boy Aladdin. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. If you're old, hey, what to do? But hey, today we got the zombie virus just discovered in ice that nobody's talking about. You know, it's all been hidden again. All our governments, whether you're China, whether you're Japan, whether you're Russian, whether you're American, zombies are real, people. Let's get into it.
Danger lurks in the corners. A quick glance at the history books shows that over time, many devastating diseases were rampant, killing thousands upon thousands of people. Today we want to join you in looking at some of the most terrifying and mysterious plagues of all time, and the risk posed by the 48,500-year-old virus that was recently revived. But before we start, be sure to leave us a like and a subscription to support us for free and push the algorithm. And what do you think? Which disease has claimed the most fatalities so far? Write us your guess in the comments and find out now if you were right. Also, stick around until the end to learn about one of the greatest new threats to the human race. The zombie virus. A few weeks ago, a disturbing headline made the rounds. Scientists have succeeded in reviving an ancient zombie virus. So is this a pathogen that turns us all into mindless undead? No, luckily it's not quite like that. The word zombie rather alludes to the fact that the virus has spent the last 48,500 years in a permafrost in Siberia, and despite all this time is still intact. However, the fact that we have rediscovered the invisible pathogen at all is due to a sad development. According to this, the thawing of the soil caused by climate change means that more and more worrying things are being brought to light in the same breath that have been dormant for centuries. Within the samples taken, a European research team discovered not just one, but 13 previously unknown pathogens. As already mentioned, despite all this time, these are still infectious nowadays. However, with regard to the potential danger posed to us as humans by the revived zombie viruses, the experts gave the all clear. Since the strains examined can mainly infect amoebas, the risk for one is, quote, completely negligible. However, this only applies in this case. Theoretically, the revival of a pathogen that could spread to humans and animals could have devastating consequences. How many and which viruses are currently still trapped in the permafrost and may soon return to the surface of the Earth cannot yet be foreseen. In 2016, dozens of people had to experience firsthand how serious the potential danger of such pathogens really is. At that time, the first anthrax outbreak was recorded in Russia for 75 years. After spores of the anthrax bacterium were released, they infected herds of reindeer. After all, people also contracted the disease by eating the meat. A 12-year-old should not survive the infection. The Black Death. 200 million dead. This is the dramatic number of victims that the bubonic plague claimed worldwide between the years 1346 and 1353. No other wave of disease has killed more people. It is therefore not surprising that the term Black Death is still used today as a general synonym for devastating pandemics. At the time, 25 million victims of the plague were counted in Europe alone. This corresponded to about 1/3 of the continental population. Yersinia pestis has now been identified as the cause of the pandemic. The pathogen most likely originated in Central Asia and reached Europe via trade routes. Once in the Eastern Mediterranean, the horrible disease spread across the continent via rat fleas. However, the causes of the outbreak of the disease were completely unknown to the people of that time. In many places, the Jewish people were targeted for poisoning local wells and thus started the deadly pandemic. These false accusations fueled cruel crimes against Jewish people, in which entire Jewish communities were destroyed. In desperation, people tried to protect themselves from the plague by wearing clothes over their mouths, burning fragrant herbs, and spraying rosewater. Doctors saw bloodletting as a promising treatment, despite the fact that the loss of blood only weakened the sick. English sweat. The so-called English sweat is probably one of the most mysterious waves of disease in history. It occurred in 5 waves in the 15th and 16th centuries, and to this day, we have no idea which pathogen caused the plague in the first place. The only thing that is certain is that the disease was extremely contagious, and in most cases, fatal. Frequently, only a few hours passed from the appearance of the first symptoms to death. As the name of the mysterious disease already suggests, it manifested itself primarily in the form of extreme sweating. As already mentioned, experts have always been in the dark about the pathogen. The corresponding theories range from viral infections to influenza and inhalation of anthrax. Although victims of the disease were to be identified in graves in 2001, the scientists were unable to reveal the pathogen using DNA analysis. In order to understand how the symptoms manifest themselves in reality, we will simply let the English doctor have his say at this point. He wrote in 1485, "Profuse sweating and stinking, with flushing of the face and whole body, an unquenchable thirst with great heat and headache." The last outbreak was recorded in 1551. Since then, the English sweat has never appeared again. Coccolizli. When the Spanish conquistadors returned from the New World, they brought exotic souvenirs from their old homeland, such as tomatoes, potatoes, corn, and last but not least, syphilis. In the same breath, dangerous diseases like measles and smallpox made their way to America. Since the indigenous population had no immunity to the relevant pathogens, they felt the deadly consequences of the outbreaks with full force. When Hernán Cortés began conquering the Aztec Empire, there were about 25 million people living there. Just a century later, their number had dropped to 1 million, although this was not primarily due to the bloody clashes with the Europeans. According to this, the disease alone, which the locals called Coccolizli, claimed the lives of up to 15 million people. The symptoms were practically unsurpassable in terms of cruelty. Anyone who had been infected complained of a high fever, which was accompanied by bleeding from the eyes, mouth, and nose. We now know that Coccolizli, which translates as plague or just disease, has the scientific name Salmonella enterica paratyphi C. This finding was brought to light by an international study from 2018. Russian flu. Whether the Russian flu, which raged between 1889 and 1895, was ultimately caused by corona or influenza viruses is still disputed to this day. What is certain is that the wave of the disease first emerged in Central Asia, from where it swept over the trade routes to China, Russia, Europe, and finally the whole world. With an estimated 1 million fatalities, the Russian flu became the worst respiratory infection of all time at that time. The course of the disease was typically short, but uncomparably severe, a high fever which followed by headaches, nausea, and in many cases, death. Around 250,000 people died from the disease in Europe, and up to 750,000 globally. Spanish flu. In 1918, large parts of Europe were in flames, and although the relentless fighting of World War I had already claimed 17 million lives, little did people know that a much larger wave of deaths was only just beginning to roll. In fact, according to the official estimates of the WHO, the Spanish flu claimed 50 million lives. With 500 million infected people worldwide, this results in a mortality rate of up to 10%. While small children and older people tend to belong to the risk group, the special feature of the Spanish flu was that it mainly succumbed to 20 to 40-year-olds. Although the unusual offspring of the influenza virus, which spread between 1918 and 1920, is officially known as Spanish flu. This term, however, is somewhat misleading. In fact, the disease didn't first appear there. The Spaniards were simply the first to report it openly. To this day, we do not know in detail where the exact starting point of the epidemic was. The most likely theory is that it originated in the USA and from there reached Europe via the fighting troops. Ebola. What is commonly referred to as Ebola actually means two different things: the virus and the disease it causes. In detail, the pathogen includes 5 known strains that can be spread not only to humans, but also to primates such as chimpanzees or gorillas. The official name goes back to a river in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This is where the virus was first detected in humans in the mid-1970s. So far, researchers have not been able to identify the natural reservoir of the Ebola virus. However, the data collected so far strongly point to different flying fox species living in large parts of Africa. Monkeys and antelopes probably act as intermediate hosts. The pathogen can be transmitted indirectly by eating infected fruit or directly by touching an animal. In most cases, however, transmission occurs through contact with bodily waste. After an incubation period of up to 3 weeks, the zoonosis triggers a so-called hemorrhagic fever. This means that the pathogen spreads throughout the bloodstream in the body and causes clots there that block the vessels. As a result, heavy bleeding occurs, which can ultimately lead to organ failure. In detail, the mortality rate of Ebola fever is estimated at 50 to 90%. Of the approximately 3,000 registered cases, around 2,200 were fatal. Yellow fever experiment. In the late 18th century, the U.S. city of Philadelphia was hit by a severe yellow fever epidemic that claimed the lives of thousands of residents. However, since it was not yet known in detail how the disease spreads, the Dr. Stubbins Firth decided to carry out the most disgusting experiment possible. Based on his observations, which showed that the number of yellow fever cases was significantly higher in summer than in winter, he put forth the thesis that it was not an infectious disease, but an affliction that is favored by heat and other environmental influences. In order to prove that the disease was not contagious, the doctor began eating his patient's vomit in a variety of ways, including drinking it. Since he had no severe symptoms to complain about, he saw his theory confirmed. If he couldn't get sick by directly eating the patient's vomit, that would mean that the disease is not contagious, right? Well, not exactly. We now know that yellow fever is a serious contagious and infectious disease. Since this is transmitted by mosquitoes, which are known to be active mainly in summer, the seasonal difference in the incidence of the disease can also be explained. However, why Stubbins Firth did not contact yellow fever himself during his experiment remains a great mystery. Some theorize that it's because he only consumed the body fluids of late-stage patients, but this is merely a theory. Whatever the case may be, one thing's for sure, this doctor was a very strange man. TGN 1412. In 2006, a medical trial was conducted with the laudable goal of revolutionizing the treatment of autoimmune diseases and blood cancer. In order for this to succeed, a company from Versberg developed the antibody TGN 1412, which had already been successfully tested on animals and cell cultures. Finally, it was time to test the effect of the novel antibody on humans as well, with catastrophic consequences. All 6 men who had been administered the drug showed severe reactions such as headaches, fever, and vomiting within a few minutes. One of the participants said he felt like he was being burned alive, but the situation was to become even more dramatic. Finally, multiple organ failures were found in the subjects, which meant that some of them had to be artificially ventilated and fought for their lives in the intensive care unit for days. One of those affected even fell into a coma for 3 weeks. Marburg virus. Marburg virus is a highly fatal disease that is known as one of the most harmful pathogens to humans. It was first discovered in Marburg and Frankfurt, Germany in 1967, after workers of the industrial plant began to start experiencing worrying symptoms. Marburg virus starts as a fever with chills and a headache, leading many to think it could be a bad case of the flu. Over the coming days, nausea, chest pain, and abdominal pains appear. As the virus progresses, patients can experience jaundice, pancreatic inflammation, severe weight loss, shock, organ failure, and even hemorrhaging. Marburg virus is thought to have originated from animals, either bats or monkeys, and it is spread to humans after contact with infected feces or other bodily fluids. From the transmission, the disease begins hopping from person to person through several different methods, the main two being bodily fluids of an infected person or coming into contact with objects such as medical instruments and bedding from those with the virus. According to the CDC, the fatality rate is somewhere between 23% to 100% in cases of patients affected by the Marburg virus. Once the transmission is made from animal to human, it rapidly spreads to other humans due to physical contact. There is currently no known vaccine or even specific treatment for the virus, meaning an outbreak could be deadly for humans. Alright folks, now it's your turn. What is on your mind in the light of the terrible diseases?
Just to think, there's so many viruses out there. And you could just come across one and not even know. Man, y'all be safe out there, man. Try not to. This is why I don't go anywhere. I stay here at home, chill with the fiance, my 10-month-old. I don't go out at all. These are one of the reasons. Somebody could be carrying something from another country. In other words, I don't travel. I don't go out much. These are one of the reasons. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. For now, it's your boy Aladdin. Thanks for watching.